in the Western Hemisphere. America took over 2 Venezuela-linked oil ships today. DJT announcing he got Venezuela to cough up 30 to 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S. And naturally, the Dems are steaming mad over Red Hot Don's latest moves.
This president, instead, he's declared war on every country in the globe, either economically with the stupid tariff tax or militarily, as he's done with Nigeria, Syria, Venezuela, and now possibly Greenland.
If it was legitimate to invade a corrupt and an attempted authoritarian nation, then we've got to get troops on San Francisco and Boston and all up and down the East and West Coast, because we would be ripe for invasion if somebody wanted to overturn a massively corrupt regime, which is, in my opinion, which we have here right this minute.
Wait, I thought you guys were against Trump sending the National Guard in, and now you're for it? Okay, Dana.
Yes.
It's funny how you see the media in the last couple of months or so, and the Democrats trying to portray the Trump movement as splitting. But it seems like the Dems are splitting over Venezuela. You have kind of like the honest Democrats who say this is a good thing and recognize that they had said that before Trump. And then you have the dishonest ones that said get rid of Maduro, but now say that's immoral.
Yeah, process stories are always more interesting to the press than anything else. And they want, it's like when you try to like make something happen, they want MAGA to split apart. And maybe in the future, when President Trump is no longer the president, there might be some sort of fissures. But it also shows that there's still a pretty big tent, and Republicans are hanging with the president overall. There's quibbles here and there, but the Democrats have serious problems. There was a big interview the other day. Article. It was just this morning. It's been a long day. Jason Riley in the Wall Street Journal writes about what is the difference between a Democrat and a democratic socialist. And you start to ask Democrats this, and they can't answer it.
I can.
They don't. Well, okay, go ahead.
A Democrat believes that government's role is to promote, help business and capitalism produce enough for everybody. Democrats believe that there ought to be an adequate safety net that doesn't encourage people not to work, that helps people when they do, helping their kids get to college, helping their neighborhoods be safe. A socialist Democrat, in my estimation, believes that things ought to be given away for free, that regardless of if there's just a need, you ought to give it away for free, that you ought to tax people who have more, even if you don't use it in an efficient or responsible way. I didn't grow up a socialist Democrat. I grew up in a strong Democratic family and tradition. And we're talking, work hard and play by the rules and keep God first. You can accomplish anything.
Is there room for both within the big tent of the Democratic Party?
Of course. I would remind all of us around the table, President Trump, when he ran for president in 2016, redefined politics and redefined the Republican Party. He brought Democrats into the Republican Party. He even pushed some Republicans out. They eventually came back. But we're at a moment now where politics is being completely redefined. So the Democratic Party I grew up in is very different than the one that's being talked about today. But I will not for any moment allow anyone to take how I grew up in tradition I served in Congress in away from me, or for that matter, away from so many in this country who I think subscribe to what I believe in.
I think Harold hit on a key point, Lawrence, that the Trump frame is above and beyond the typical politician's frame. Either you're a neocon or you're an isolationist. His is a very simple America first, just win, baby. And I think everybody will be for him with Venezuela until it doesn't work out. Then they might go, that's bad. But it's like case by case. It's not ideological.
Can I be honest? And I think a lot of people in the audience feel this way. This is where I struggle, right? Because I have felt a certain way about intervention my entire life, about war. And then I find myself liking what the president has done. And I guess we call it a hybrid model. Maybe you don't call him a neocon. Maybe you don't call him an interview. Maybe you don't call him an isolationist. You know what it is? Winning
feels good.
What does feel good? And then
Leading feels
sometimes
good.
Things that you traditionally don't say feel right. For example, a lot of people don't like him saying, take the oil. But for me, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to pay for it with our money, how are you going to pay for this? How are you going to pay for the military action? How are you going to rebuild this country if you're not going to use our money? The only way you do it is get a portion of the pot. And honestly, I think our troops, our country should be rewarded for helping rebuild the country as well. That may not be the classical, conservative, or libertarian approach, but I'll take the hybrid model.
Yeah, you know, Emily, Scott Adams has a really simple framing for this. You either look at a country as expanding or shrinking. And under Trump, you actually feel like the country's growing. Under the Dems, you just felt it retracting and shrinking like shriveled gonads.
Yes.
like the Crypt
I was
Keeper,
gonna say beautiful.
dehydrated.
I know.
killed. Yes, I don't see this as a second Iraq building or us sort of taking over. I see this as reasserting deterrence. I see this as shrinking our enemies in our backyard and saying, actually, sanctions aren't just signals or symbolic anymore. They actually mean something. And we're going to enforce this in maritime. Naval lanes matter, and leverage is now reclaimed. And I think under prior administrations, and again, it's like inheriting things. People are like, well, this is the way it's always done. Now it's like, no, we actually reject weakness, and our word means something. And now I think it's not quite a reshaping of conservative viewpoints, but I see it as a stretching the limits of the executive authority. And I think what it does test is our tolerance, to your point about, struggling with it, the tolerance of people for it. But I think the lower tolerance would be if our enemies grow real big, fat, and strong right in our backyard. And so you pay, what is it, pound a penny, 6 pence, whatever it is, where you pay a penny now and it's worth like $10 later, whatever that phrase is. That's what we're seeing now. But we are investing in our strength, and we're showing Russia not on our watch anymore.
Remember leading from behind during the Obama administration? I hated that.
That was terrible,
Leading from
and
behind.
that was terrible. And messing around and finding out is equally terrible. We ought to have a clear policy. I agree with you, Lawrence. There's some parts of it I like, and some parts that I'm just puzzled by. We just need to understand if sharing in their oil profits is going to make their country more stable and less inclined and less susceptible to be influenced by Russia or China or anyone in their backyard, and equally